Let's begin then, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Healthy Living and Social Care Scrutiny Committee. Date and time of this meeting is Tuesday the 8th of March at 5 p.m. So before we get into the agenda itself, can I just remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded via the internet, and this recording is archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when others are participating where other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, they can put their hand up via the chat function, or they can obviously signal it on the screen and I'll look out for you. And then finally, please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues or to grab the attention of the chairman or Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let the chairman or Democratic Officer know. If they have a webcam, then they should try turning this off, as this will help the broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth, so they can at least hear and be heard. So without further ado, let's go into agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. I don't have any. Amy?
None to myself, Chair. I think Councillor Jarvie is.
Yeah. Hi, Councillor Jarvie.
Sorry, Chair, just a quickie. I have to attend an in-person meeting in Cowbridge later on, so I shall be leaving before the end of this meeting. I'm sorry.
No problem.
And I'll stay here as long as I can.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvie. Anyone else?
Just to confirm, Chair, I don't believe Councillor Owen Griffiths or Councillor John Thomas have joined us yet, but I haven't received any formal apologies so far.
Okay, no problem. I haven't seen anything in my email, so hopefully they'll be here very shortly. Okay, thank you. Right, let's go on to agenda item 2 then, which is the minutes of the meeting held on 11th of January of this year. So does anyone have any queries regarding the minutes, or are we happy to move it on block? I'm happy to propose, and Councillor Jarvie just put his hand up to second. You okay with that, Councillor Jarvie? Okay, thank you very much. And now agenda item 3, which is to receive any declarations of interest. Everyone seems to be okay with that. I can't see anything. So brilliant. Let's move on then to the first report this evening, which is from the Director of Social Services, which is agenda item 4, which is support for carers in the Vale of Glamorgan. So hi, Amanda, Natasha, and James and Nicola Hale. Have I missed anyone else out? Would you like to take this agenda on?
Natasha's not able to make it, but Nicola is here. So I'll just introduce the report if that's okay with you.
That's great, no problem.
Okay, so this is the annual report for unpaid carers, which enables Scrutiny Committee to have oversight of the important function, services and regional work taking place. It was last presented to you on the 9th of March last year. And over the past year, the Vale has maximised use of Welsh Government funding to develop services and support. Working on a regional footprint, we've launched the Regional Carers Identity Card for young carers and also the Carers Gateway, which we're going through another procurement exercise for as we speak. And there have been key national developments in the publication of the National Strategy for Unpaid Carers, where there will be a newly established Carers Charter and a new duty to support unpaid carers in education and the workplace. All of this sits within the Regional Carers work stream that provides highlight reports to the RPB. So if that's okay with you, I'll hand you over to Nicola, who will present the report. And any questions, please do ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Hi, my name is Nicola Hale and I work in the Social Services Department, and I've got an implementation lead for unpaid carers in the Vale. Can I start with just saying a thank you to Councillor Gwyn John, our elected member carer champion. He provided some information on his personal experience of caring to enable us to form the foreword for our report. I'm very grateful for that, and I'm sure it struck a chord with many of us, and it was a good lead into our annual update. Our annual update provides a brief overview of the services and support in the Vale of Glamorgan for our unpaid carers, and also the responses to the Welsh Government priorities for unpaid carers. And I hope you found the read both informative and interesting. The pandemic has resulted in far more carers being created, for want of a better word, and also increased the roles and the responsibilities of carers that were already in existence before the pandemic. But it's also shone a positive light on the role of unpaid carers, and I think we need to try and continue the momentum that has created for us. And the report will highlight some of the responses to our support for carers in the Vale. Firstly, I wanted to highlight for you the fact that we are trying to rebadge carers by using the terminology unpaid carers to try and distinguish the people that we're trying to support under the Social Services and Wellbeing Act from those who may be in paid or professional professions or roles from those that we're trying to support. So you forgive me if I do lapse sometimes back into using the term carers, because I'm still getting used to it myself, but it's unpaid carers I'm referring to. One of the major initiatives that has now been added to our portfolio for support is the Cardiff and Vale Carers Gateway. This is a community-based information and advice service for carers. That is a regional service and is going from strength to strength. We are planning to continue the service into the future, and I understand commissioning arrangements are already afoot to do that. But the service has been really well received. The number of carers accessing its support are continuing to grow. And we've made a conscious effort to try to direct all carers that we're in contact with to that service so that they can be signposted to services and support in the community that they can access whenever they need it, providing timely service and response to their needs. In the first 3 quarters of the current year, there were 249 referrals to the Gateway. And some of those progressed to requiring a full statutory service or assessment from ourselves. But the majority of carers were well served by the information and support that the Gateway were able to provide. This financial year, has also seen the launch of a Young Carers ID card, which is a national template, but one which we've embraced as a region, Cardiff and the Vale, and we launched our card in June 2021. And to date, we're at about 100 cards have been issued to our own local young carers. The idea of the cards is that young carers can be easily recognised within their school environments, meaning that they don't have to continually inform staff that they are young carers and have to explain themselves. It's also been widely promoted to health, and particularly within pharmacies, so that young carers who may need to collect prescriptions on behalf of family members can now do so again without having to answer 20 questions and identify themselves by any other means. This is a work in progress. We have the card, we're making it available to the young carers that we're currently supporting, but the next stages of that development will be made to make it more widely available to carers who maybe aren't getting support from us, and also to identify new young carers as well. Respite continues to be a major way that we support carers, all sorts of carers. And it's proven to be really, really important and can make the difference between a carer being able to continue in their role or not. We've got various funding streams which we're exploiting to the full, and make a really wide range of respite or break facilities for carers available. We do this through our usual care management processes. So service users who already have support in place, their carers can access extra support packages through this funding, and we also provide one-off opportunities as well for carers to take a break. And some of the examples that we've funded recently have been short spa breaks for carers to have a relaxing experience away from their caring roles. We've paid for fishing equipment, bicycles, gym membership, as well as traditional stays in hotels for short breaks and caravans. I also mentioned in the report as well that we'll shortly be looking to provide some carers with vouchers so that they can use those to access events and activities, leisure activities in the community when they want to, and either on their own or with the person that they're caring for. Future plans, I've also put that into the report as well. One of the things that we need to do is to consider how we can meet the new fourth strand to the national strategy, and that's about supporting carers in employment and education. So that will be something that we'll be looking at as a region for the future. I think that's all I wanted to say to you. But if you bear with me, I would like just to read the last paragraph from the report, which is this: that unpaid carers are a valued asset within our communities, and without their continued support for those who are vulnerable and requiring assistance, our own health and social care services would be unable to cope. Thank you. Have any questions?
Thank you, Nicola and Amanda. Happy to open it up. But first, I can see Gwyn has just put his hand up really quickly. Hi, Gwyn, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will wait if other committee members want to speak first. If you want to bring other committee members in first, I'll wait.
Okay, no problem. Councillor Thomas, I see you got a hand up. We shall move.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Gwyn. And thank you for your contribution to compiling this report. I know how much you've done over the last few years, and I pay tribute to you for that and acknowledge your experience in that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Councillor Thomas. Would you mind moving your microphone slightly? It's quite a bit difficult to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
That's much better. Thank you very much.
Sorry, yeah,
that's okay. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, well, going back, I was thanking Gwyn for his contribution and acknowledging that I'm aware of the amount of work that he's put in, both in this report and previously his experience in a caring role. Can I thank Nicola and the team for this excellent report? Unpaid carers, as you rightly acknowledged, do so much to carry the majority of the work in looking after those in need of care, sometimes on a 24-hour basis in order to maintain residents in the community. This puts sometimes extreme stress on these unpaid carers, and I welcome the moves to provide respite and stress-relieving activities and periods away, the spa things you mentioned, the hotel things you mentioned, which is vital to their mental well-being and their ability to recharge themselves. I also welcome the new young carer cards, and I'd like to see them perhaps having even more cachet by allowing priority access to facilities and services. I mean, you suggested that that's going to be a thing. I look forward to that becoming a regular thing, and that the young carers will be able to use these, say, the leisure centres and so on, to get involved and get away occasionally at reduced or no expense, preferably. I don't really have a question. I just wanted to thank you for the report and welcome it and offer my support for the things that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I'm happy for you to go next Councillor John and then Councillor Gray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And just quickly, just a couple of words to say, I think unpaid carers, and we're so grateful to all the many carers across the Vale of Glamorgan. It's a huge experience that comes on you very quickly. You don't realise that you're going to become a carer until you realise that a relative or your loved one, whoever it may be, within your house needs help. And basically in these days, one that might be in hospital and struggling, that because waiting for the domiciliary care package to come is a long time sometimes, not through no fault of our own, but it's such a huge demand. And subsequently, it means that you can take your loved one out of hospital, providing you can provide the care. And it depends, again, on the amount of care. Because in my case, it was 24/7 care. It built up to that. Initially, it was just caring 3 or 4 times a day. But eventually it became right the way around the clock throughout the night as well. And there's a huge demands on families. But I will say, whilst we can help people, as Nicola has just told us, by giving them breaks and what have you, many people don't want to take that break because they want to look after the person and with them 24/7, that they're housebound and can't really go out on a break, particularly depending on the state of their illness. So I have huge respect. After my experiences, many people that are doing this work, I just congratulate them all for putting so much time and care for their loved ones. It does a huge job for us in the Vale of Glamorgan, because quite honestly, we just haven't got enough carers to go around. So this is something that I think the unpaid carers commit themselves to doing so much. And I hope that if I get back on the council after this election and I continue in this role, I certainly want to pay visits to people to give them my support and encouragement, because I think what they're doing in the community is absolutely fantastic. I won't delay you any more. Over to you, Ben. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor John. That was great. Echo 100% that. Councillor Gray, would you like to go next?
Yeah, if it's okay, Chair. Thank you, Councillor John, for what you've said. I can't believe, Nicola, it's been getting on. It was last June that we had the launch of the Young Carers card, and I know that was slightly delayed by COVID. And I think one of the key things, and you touched on it briefly in your introduction, is young people recognising their carers. So it's sort of a two-way thing, you know, kind of validating the fact that they are doing something and that they notice that they're carers. I just wondered how, maybe drawing it out of the report, but how many cards are we at now, roughly, in terms of carers? It's a regional approach, obviously. It's harder to sort of put just for the Vale, but I was really pleased to hear on the day stories from the young people present, and some of them have been throwing their energy into artistic endeavours, and we had some great performances on the day. So I hope they're all doing well. But I just wondered how you talked about the card rising up, and I know there's a progress plan for that. So I just wondered about numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Nicola?
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Yeah, it was a good day, the launch, wasn't it? Really successful. I don't know exactly the numbers, but we're on about the 100 mark for the Vale, and a similar number for Cardiff, actually. It's not as high as I would have liked it to have been at this point, but as you say, the pandemic has got in the way of a faster rollout, as well as, I'll be honest, some technical issues with the equipment that was purchased to produce the card has held us back a bit. But we've got a plan for catching up with that backlog, and a plan for continued promotion of the card as well, to encourage more and more young carers to take it up. I think we're going to take a more proactive move with young carers who are known to us and supported by a Young Carers project, and more or less say to them, there is a card for you, would you like it, rather than saying, would you like to apply for one? Yeah, being a bit more direct, I think, to encourage more take up. And we're also looking at adding some of the benefits that were mentioned earlier to encourage that take up as well.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Cheers. Councillor Nugent-Finn, hi there.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nicola, for the presentation. Nicola, my phone rang in the middle of your presentation, so I apologise if I'm asking a question that you might have actually already discussed, but it's specific to the carers card. Can you just tell me how exactly it's currently accessible? So, you know, how would I signpost a young person to? So, for example, you're in schools, you're in youth clubs, you know, how do they access it? How do I sort of signpost, please, Nicola?
It can be done in a number of ways. Schools, it's been promoted very heavily in schools. So in each of the schools, we have a carers champion who is very aware of the card and can make a request for a card on behalf of a young carer. And any school can do that, primary or secondary school. Young carers can request a card themselves. We're calling it a request, by the way, not an application, because there is no eligibility other than being a young carer. So we're calling it a request form. So young carers can ask for it themselves. And we've been working to deliver this with Cardiff YMCA, who deliver our Young Carers project. And their website is hosting the information about the card as well as the application forms. Or the request forms. So a young carer can go on there, or a trusted referrer that we call in the champions in schools, complete a form. It'll go into the YMCA and they will physically produce the card and get it out to the young carer.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Nicola. A young person's approached me and they brought a fantastic initiative really together. They're aware of the period poverty pack for young women in school. And a young male carer said, actually, I could do with a similar pack in terms of hygiene, because he's looking after 2 people in his family and he hasn't had an opportunity to, you know, he comes to school sometimes and he hasn't had time to have a wash or a bath or a shower. You know, subsequently, he's been picked on in school. So that's how it's come to me, which I'm really glad about. But, you know, it's sort of a bit of food for thought, really, if we could produce some sort of additionality to what you're doing in a sort of a hygiene pack for young male carers as well. I thought it was a fantastic idea, and I commend this young person for coming to speak to me, really. And the good news is, we're sorting out now with the school, but if you could have a conversation about that another time, Nicola, that would be fantastic.
Certainly I will.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, sorry to come back. It occurred to me listening to the discussion. A lot of the people who are receiving the care from the young carers and the other carers are well known to their GPs and have diagnoses, and are GPs being used as a gateway to identify people who are looking after the people who need the care, if you follow me. I'm getting steps away from it here. And is there scope for some sort of introductory pack to be provided via GPs and other avenues to carers to signpost them to support and services and the card and all the other things perhaps can all be given as almost as an introductory pack to everybody, that but perhaps given to the people who are receiving the care, so that they can then pass them on to the carers, the unpaid carers. Just the thought that occurred to me during the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. We don't have a pack, but we do have a very active accreditation scheme for our GP practices across the Vale, and GP practices are all encouraged to attain this accreditation, which means that they have a certain level of knowledge and information available within each of their practices for unpaid carers. One of the criteria to getting the accreditation at its basic level, which is a bronze level, is that they maintain a carers register and that they have a basic suite of information to hand physically in their practices, as well as available through their patient portals. And we've been involved in that scheme for a number of years now, and I'm pleased to say that every GP practice in the area, to some extent, has achieved some level of accreditation with that. So we're in regular contact with them. We will furnish them with up-to-date information. So the gateway, for example, a new development, is something that we would have proactively made available to GP practices. And we also send our carers development officer to an annual meeting that the practice managers have as an opportunity to update them with current information and make sure that they're replenished with any leaflets, booklets, information, signposting that they may need.
Maybe some thought could be given though to perhaps some sort of pack to be distributed. I know it would include things like the leaflets that you mentioned and so forth that would then help the carers sort of find their way through the maze of support that we know is out there, but can sometimes be extremely confusing for people. Maybe there's scope for consideration of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Avia, to see your hand up. Hi.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, how do you actually identify young carers if they don't come forward? Because some of them might be really private and they might not want anybody to know, but how would you identify them?
They are encouraged to self-identify through information that's available within their schools. So, for example, there are posters that schools display which enable young carers to look at and digest and to form their own opinion as to whether they are a carer or not. And I know that has enabled us to identify some new young carers through that means. The carers champions in schools that I spoke about just now, they are well versed in being able to identify young carers, and they tell me there are often signs and signals that they pick up through their work with young people that indicate to them that they are dealing with the young carer, even though the young person themselves may not realise it. And part of their role is to encourage them to acknowledge their role and to take advantage of the services and support available to them. There are young carers who are known to their teachers and to the carers champions who don't want anyone else to be aware of their situation. Conversely, there are young carers who are known to social services who don't want their schools to know for various reasons. And I suppose our challenge is to support those young people in the best way possible for their own individual needs. If they choose not to be known, then that is their choice, but we still need to make sure that they're aware of the support available, and we, as you say, we support them in the best way possible.
Thank you.
Great, thank you both. Okay, do we have any other questions or comments we would like to ask while we're here?
Can I move the recommendations then, please?
Okay, no problem. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Jarvie. Okay, thank you. One or two quick things. Thank you so much, Nicola and the team. That's great, and I'm really happy to hear about the proactiveness you're going to put in to do with the young carers card. I think that'll be very, very useful. And yeah, good luck with the scheme and everything. One question I do have regarding the recommendations: we're going to receive a report on an annual basis. Are we going to see the report around this time next year or a little earlier? Do we have an idea?
Yes, it will be the same time next year as well. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Okay. Thank you, Nicola, Amanda, and the team, Suzanne. If you want to stay, if you want to leave, it's all up to yourselves. But we can now move on to the next agenda item, and that is agenda item 5, which is the Year 9 performance report to do with the leisure management contract. And I see David has just appeared on my screen, and I'm sure he'll take this report. Hi, David.
Hi, thank you very much, Chair. Just to confirm to committee, this is the annual report that covers year 9 of the leisure management contract. So that takes us from August 2020 to July 2021. Obviously, this was a particularly difficult period due to COVID. I'm delighted to say that Colleen Tumulty from Legacy Leisure is here with us tonight and is going to deliver a very short presentation shortly and is here to answer any questions. As well as looking at the performance of the year 9 of the leisure management contract, we are also continuing to respond to queries that were raised in the Welsh Audit Report into the service. Members will probably be aware that the 2 main issues raised by Welsh Audit Office were value for money in terms of our leisure management contract and strengthening the application of sustainable development principles. On the first issue of value for money, we've undertaken quite a thorough research exercise and obviously demonstrated now that the Val Glamorgan contract represents best value for money in Wales and is in fact the only contract where we're actually, prior to COVID, we're getting a revenue surplus in terms of our operation. So I think that's something that we're particularly proud of. Moving on to the report for year 9, members will note that the attendance figures are significantly down, but obviously the reasons for these were the restrictions and the closures that were experienced during this particular period of time. I think special mention should be made to the quick modifications Legacy made to their services during the COVID period as the rules changed at certain times and as we were allowed to reopen at fairly short notice. I think special praise should also be given to Legacy Parkwood in terms of the app that they were able to develop in very quick time, which dealt with some of the major issues that COVID presented to the service in terms of bookings only being allowed at certain times and reducing customer contact with reception, etc., by speeding up the access to gyms and other facilities very, very quickly. In terms of the second part of the Welsh Audit challenges, regular meetings have been held with Welsh Audit, and again Legacy have very much been working in partnership with us in tackling the challenges posed by Welsh Audit Office. We're also working closely with the Health Board on a number of initiatives. This week we have had an initial review of one of these schemes which members may be interested in, which was the Golden Pass pilot scheme, which has demonstrated an 80% increase in physical activity for those that were in the pilot scheme, and obviously we're very hopeful now we're going to be able to spread that scheme across the whole of the Val Glamorgan. We are also in the process, bearing in mind the comments made by Welsh Office, of reviewing our leisure strategy, and that will no doubt come back to this particular scrutiny committee at some point in the future. Before requesting any questions on either the contract or the Welsh Audit challenges, Colleen from Parkwood is here to deliver a very short presentation for us in terms of how they're looking to meet some of the queries that have been raised by Welsh Audit Office and how they're looking to work in partnership with us in terms of addressing those. So I think I'm going to be sharing my screen and using the presentation that Colleen's prepared. Colleen, are you ready?
Yes, thanks, Dave. I'm here. I'm ready.
I'm just trying to find your presentation that I've saved somewhere on my computer screen and now can't find. So just bear with me for a short second.
You're under pressure, David.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
Are you signalling to leave, Councillor John? Oh, I think you're on mute, Councillor John.
No, I was just saying hello to Colleen, actually.
Oh, right,
for a long time.
Hi, how are you?
Cabinet member of Leisure.
Yes, nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
Is that on your screen? Are we?
It is,
Yep.
Dave, yes.
Yeah, I can see it.
I shall pass over to Colleen and try and keep up with her as she goes along.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you everybody for the opportunity to do this short presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you've got on this and anything to do with the contract in due course. During COVID, and obviously since the pandemic, we've having been sent into quite a difficult period for the leisure market in its entirety. We as a company sort of took stock of where we were and how we have been engaging and entering to our relationships and our contracts with our partners. We have been very fortunate through the pandemic that the relationships we have with all of our local authority clients have been very strong and remain very strong. And we've begun to look at how we can perhaps better sit within the context and framework, both nationally and locally, in terms of leisure service delivery. Certainly, as a group, we have begun to develop active community strategies where we've been working with our local authority partners, with Sport England. These are predominantly currently in England, and our majority of our contracts are England based, unfortunately. But we've been beginning to put our work into a context. So this sits and resonates particularly well, I think, with the Welsh Audit Office report. And as I'm sure you're aware, the leisure management contract was signed and commenced back in 2012, which very much predates the Future of Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and other legislation and frameworks which have come out since. So what we are beginning to do, and certainly have been doing here in the Vale of Glamorgan, is to very much put the leisure centre service in the context of those 7 outcomes, really. Now, leisure can't deliver on all of those to the same extent, but it certainly has a role to play in some of them. So what we've begun to do in developing an active communities plan with and for the Vale of Glamorgan is to align our work with the Future Generations Act, with your corporate plan, with your leisure strategy, with the Eat Well, Move More of the Health Authority, and begin to draw out of those the synergies that we have with the leisure centre service, which is predominantly around physical activity, obviously, and sport, and how that can generate and assist and deliver on those outcomes. So what we've been doing to date is work on the strategy side of things, which we've been doing independently so far, but I have a draft strategy, which I'm hoping to be able to release in the next week or so for consultation. And really, in terms of the slide that you're looking at the moment, it takes us to really the sort of first 3 boxes is where we've been. So we've been looking at what we do. We've been looking at all the outcomes from your corporate plan that affect, leisure, health, physical activity, wherever we can draw a strand where the leisure centre service can help deliver against those outcomes. We've then been looking at how what we do currently fits into that. So this is I suppose it's a strategy of 2 parts. One is what do we do now, which fits into that, so that we can respond to some of the issues and criticisms raised by the Welsh Audit Office. But where can we go in the future more proactively in order to make sure that the leisure centre service does fit into that broader context? We will always do what we always do, so there will always be an element of service, but what we're trying to do is really to start to work better outside of the walls of the leisure centre to make sure that we engage with communities and we engage with other departments and other services across the Vale of Glamorgan to make sure that we are working together for the best outcomes. And it was very interesting to me, the previous report about young carers. So there's certainly a note that I've made about how, as they become more proactive with young carers, what we can do to support that and to develop opportunities for those young people who are in that carer scenario. So what we're So we've done the context stuff. We are in the middle of one of the things I think that we have struggled with is resource. So we have identified some funding that we are going to put into recruiting an active communities manager, whose role and responsibility really will be to take the strategy and develop the action plan and make sure that we are working out with the centres. I'm sure you appreciate a busy leisure centre with the sort of duty staff that we've got don't necessarily have the time to do that outreach work, and we want to make sure that there is a dedicated resource that is constantly looking at the leisure centre service and how it can fit and sit within the broader context of all the wider objectives that we would all like to deliver on. So our immediate priorities or commitments. So we've done some of the strategy shaping. We'll be topping and tailing that and then sharing it with yourselves, and as suggested by Dave, other groups that we can consult on to make sure we're going in the right direction strategically. And then we are currently out to advert and recruiting the full-time active communities role. They will then take that work and begin to develop more detailed action plans, which will be on a yearly basis, really. We've got a 3-year strategy, but we want to have annual action plans so that we can have something within a defined time frame that is deliverable. We'll be conducting an assessment of social value impact for the Vale of Glamorgan. There is a national model. I think it's run by one of the Sheffield Hallam University, that can sort of plug in the user statistics that we've got, and then that will demonstrate the sort of social impact of the service currently. And we'll renew that in the end of 3 years to see that if we've made a difference in terms of that social impact. We'll be working with our current and existing partnerships. We've got some, we're looking at external funding opportunities. And then obviously when we have a plan, there will be a process in there to sort of monitor, measure and review and amend and then move into the next stage. So in terms of our next steps, I've probably said all this already, but we're going to get some feedback on the strategy, recruit the active communities manager, conduct the social value assessment so we've got a baseline of where we are, develop that strategy into detailed action plans, consult on those, and then we're hoping that this will commence in January 2023 in terms of the detailed work. If we can do it before that, we will, but these things can take time, and we want to make sure in terms of our engagement that we are talking to and engaging with a wide aspect of the community and organisations and departments of the council and others that can have a hand in what we're doing. So that's what we're doing in terms of active communities. It does, as David said, sit well within the Welsh Audit Office review and some of the issues that they've raised with us. I think we feel that we already deliver on those outcomes that they've identified, but perhaps not explicitly enough. And this work will make sure that we're able to do that on an annual basis. So thank you. And if you have any questions about that or anything else, then please let me know.
I think before we move on to questions, Chair, I'd just like to say, obviously, where we've always been with Legacy is we've always viewed this contract very much as a partnership rather than as a contractor sort of client relationship. We've always tried to work very much with Legacy, and they've very much taken on board and have been very cooperative in the discussions that we've had with Welsh Audit Office. And on a personal level, I'd very much like to take this opportunity to thank them for that. So we're able to take questions on all the things that we've covered in this particular report.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Colleen, for the presentation. Right, question time. Councillor Thomas, hi there.
Hi again. Yeah, thank you, Dave, and thank you, Colleen. I'd like to add my thanks to Stevens for the report. The active communities manager. Are we talking Vale, Wales, or UK wide in that role? And referring to your report, there's a couple of questions I have to do with that. You talk about the changes of fees in January 22. Can you give us sort of some idea of what those changes were, how they increased, if they did? Because I know the provision was to do it. So you can give us some sort of ballpark figures on that. And On item 21 of the Legacy Leisure Report, where you talk about environmental practices, COVID's hit everybody hard, particularly the leisure services over the last couple of years, with the closures and so on, and the need to make changes to practice is in response to the now endemic COVID. Can you give us some idea of what permanent environmental changes have been made in our leisure centres to sort of allow for things like circulation of air and other advised stuff that's become obvious now through the last 2 years experiences? Thank you.
Shall I start? And I'm sure Colleen will add if there's anything that we're uncertain about. As I understand it, the posts that Legacy are looking to create or to recruit to will be for the Vale of Glamorgan. We've been able to secure some funding to assist with that from Sport Wales in terms of the recovery fund, but Legacy are very keen that this becomes a permanent role, and obviously our funding is on a temporary basis that we've been able to secure. So again, it's an opportunity for us to sort of prime fund something that can continue and continue to add benefit in future years. In terms of the fees and charges, our contract was limited when we first set it to only allowing price increases in terms of RPI. You'll be aware that inflation has been extremely high, far higher than RPI in recent years. Our prices have fallen behind the majority of our competitors in terms of what Legacy were able to charge, and basically needed a reset. So we've had the opportunity to do that. We did some comparison exercises with other authorities, and we are still very much on the cheaper side, certainly in terms of a swim, certainly in terms of gym memberships, etc. Although, going back to the original contract, it's only fair that I share with members, we only had control of certain core prices. So that would be for swimming, a badminton court, a squash court, etc. Something where there's more of a sort of open market approach, which is the gym market. Legacy are able to charge what they perceive to be the market rate as such. But again, their opportunity to generate more income comes more greatly from actually attracting more people through the doors. Obviously, that has been very difficult in terms of COVID, in terms of attracting more people, but the actual offer and the finance, when we compare the cost of gym membership in the Vale of Glamorgan to other authorities, we are still extremely competitive. And as I say, we are on the cheaper side of the vast majority across Wales. You've also asked about the environmental conditions, and obviously that has had a large impact on the service. Colleen can probably talk better about this than me, but we've had to increase the space between equipment in gyms. We've had to take some equipment out. We've had to reutilise different areas of centres, for the point that you made, Councillor Thomas, in terms of the air circulation. We've had to look at our M&E systems in terms of what they're able to deliver, in terms of the recommendations that are now being made to us, and to make sure that the proper environmental conditions, as they have changed at various times, can actually be met in terms of air turnover, the amount of time that it takes for air to turn over in a particular size room, etc. And we've worked with our colleagues in property to ensure that our facilities are the best that they can be, and certainly meet, if not exceed, the standards that have been required. I hope that reassures you in terms of that. I don't know if there's anything else you wish to add, Colleen.
No, I don't think so. Obviously, as the pandemic came upon us and there were various restrictions, we've worked within those. I think one of the things we have discovered or found, certainly since most of those restrictions are technically lifted now, is actually some of the conditions in the centres in terms of spaced out equipment have been very much welcomed by our customers. So we've continued with space management. People can choose to wear masks or not now, as the guidance and the legislation has lifted and become less restrictive. We're moving back to where we were before, but taking the good points from it in terms of our customer feedback to make sure the environment stays as clean and as friendly and as welcoming as it did immediately post-pandemic when we had very limited numbers. Obviously, the financial challenge that can remaining with restricted numbers gives us is our ability to to run the leisure centre successfully and continue to pay the management fee that Dave mentioned in his presentation as part of that. But we're on the road to recovery. We are recovering. Swimming in particular has come back much more strongly than gym spaces, and that's something that obviously we're working very hard to make sure we meet, both in terms of learn to swim programs, but also general public swimming and access to leisure swimming pools, which is obviously very much a very good health activity for every and any age group.
Yeah, thank you for that. We were aware early on that swimming, that the chlorine in the water actually has a beneficial effect, in that it has a lethal effect on the COVID virus, and I'm not so concerned about that. But as I said in my earlier intervention, COVID is now endemic rather than pandemic, as far as UK is concerned, and given that the possibility of new variants and so on are clear, and so continued mitigation to try to avoid spread of any new variant and so on before it rears its ugly head, I think is advisable. And so I'm pleased to hear that you are looking at space management and so on, and the air management. And thank you for your replies. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all. Councillor Nugent-Flynn, then Councillor Aviat.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Colleen. Thank you very much. I don't think I've met you before, so lovely to meet you. Thanks for the update. It's difficult now because I'm going back onto your presentation, so it all gets a bit lost in translation, doesn't it? But you mentioned that as the leisure centre, you're not going to be able to deliver on all of the desired outcomes. So I'm just wondering why we can't do that.
No, I mean, we can deliver on all of the desired outcomes. I think some are much more conducive to a sport and physical activity service than others. So certainly in terms of the futures, the Wellbeing for Future Generation Acts, we're structuring the strategy around those outcomes. But certainly in some of them, and obviously the Welsh language and culture one, there's a lot we can do around the Welsh language and delivering services in that medium. But there's certain aspects of that which are more difficult for us as a leisure centre service to do. So while we will deliver on all of those outcomes, certainly in cohesive communities, there's probably more that we can do than perhaps in the much broader Welsh language and culture one. So I didn't mean to suggest we wouldn't, but I think the service lends itself far more effectively to some more than others.
Yeah, appreciate that, and great that we've got a much better proactive attitude to reaching these outcomes, because they're absolutely doable. It's the approach, it's the collective, how we engage, etc. But that's great. Thanks, Colleen. I've got two more questions, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, go for it.
Could I just add something to what Colleen said first, which I think is important to bear in mind as well, in that we do operate a sports development service, and some of the aspects will be picked up by that service. And obviously this committee does have an annual report from our sports development team, so some of the aspects will be better dealt with in that particular way.
Great. Okay, Dave, keep us updated about that then, Dave. That'll be interesting. Thank you. Colleen, the draft strategy and consultation is going out shortly. Can you tell me when and how that's going to look, please, so I can again direct residents and young people?
I mean, that's something that we've yet to discuss with Dave in terms of the how. The when is we have, I've got a draft document in front of me. I just need to go back to printers and others to make sure that there's no errors in it. And then that's something I'll be talking to Dave about, how we best go forward with that. Yeah. I must very much say at this point, this is the sort of the broad context. I really want to make sure that we have really detailed engagement when we come to the action plan. Yeah. Which is taking the high level stuff and making it something real and deliverable. Yeah. So there'll be two phases to that. One will be the broader strategy bit to make sure we've got the context and the general direction in the right going in the right place. And then following that, the active communities officer will work up some action plans, engaging much further and broader, and making sure that those are consulted on much more widely, which will be at the back end of this year.
Yeah, wonderful. I don't want to be critical in any way, shape or form, but for me, communication is absolutely key.
Yeah.
You know, we sat through full council for 5.5 hours last night, and one of the consultations about non-domestic rate players, there was absolutely no response from the from any of the residents of the Vale of Glamorgan. I just want to make sure that we have every opportunity to communicate such an essential aspect of well-being to everybody that's accessible and able to access this, and that's very much the role of these elected members as well. So I just want to aid, help, assist and support what you're doing here, Colleen, you know.
Okay, thanks very much.
And the outreach service, how's that going to look, please, Colleen?
Well, at the moment, obviously, we work very much within the centre walls. We will have an active communities manager, and it's that person who will link with Dave's sports development teams, will link with the NERS, and will begin to link outside of the community, centre by centre. So obviously a lot of our work will be based in and around each leisure centre, so make sure that we're dealing directly with our immediate communities, and then hopefully opening doors and bringing people into the leisure centre, which is where we want them to be active, as well as within their own communities. So that's something that we'll be doing through and with the active communities manager. It might be that some of those outcomes are not delivered by us, but we facilitate that delivery through a funding or a grants programme, and is delivered by a community group within their own community.
Great, yeah.
And that's something that, again, we don't have the detail on yet, but that's the direction of travel that we intend to go. Legacy Leisure does have an annual grants programme. And again, we've been a bit reactive to that, but we can utilise that pot to be proactive. So as we link with groups who are maybe better placed to deliver children's activities in their own community, we can point them towards a grant system that can support them. It's not huge pots of money, but it is certainly pots of money that can help facilitate and sort of do the initial activity that may be necessary.
Lovely, thank you, Colleen. Maybe a suggestion would be working with Effie as well. It almost links with the Young Carers initiatives as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, I was interested in the previous item, because exactly how much we work there, but it could be very much a proactive piece of work that we can do. Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time, Colleen. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
No problem. Thank you, Councillor Nugent Finn. Councillor Avitt, hi there.
Yes, regarding the swimming, there used to be able to book a slots, really, book a time for women-only swimming in Barry Leisure before, and it was predominantly used by ladies of the Muslim faith. I'm just wondering if that is still going on in any of the leisure centres, and if it's not, would you be happy to support that? Thank you.
I'm delighted to say that session is still running and is still popular. Okay, if you wanted more information, I'm sorry, I should know the time and the day, shouldn't I? And off the top of my head, I'm afraid I don't, but I can circulate that to you.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And Councillor McCaffrey, I see your hand up. Hi there.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Colleen. Hello, everybody. Hi. I think it's 4 o'clock on a Sunday, Julie, off the top of my head, the all-female swimming. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is. I just wanted to kind of talk to everyone really from two ends of the spectrum. One, I'm the cabinet member for leisure, and two, I'm a user of leisure centre as well in Penarth. I know I could go to the other ones, but I do tend to go to the Penarth one. Throughout the pandemic, the leisure centre and their staff have done absolutely everything they could have done, and I've seen all ranges of ages in there, from like the young teenagers, boys and girls, to the older people in there, all the way through. If people hadn't felt safe or comfortable in that facility, they wouldn't have been doing so. So I do need to congratulate the team there in relation to that, because it has made a huge difference to people's well-being. And I think the shutting of all those facilities was just possibly the last point for most people throughout the pandemic, that they couldn't even do that. So it is worth mentioning, and I know that I've said this to Rob before and the rest of the team, in the sense that they are very well appreciated by the people who do use the facility. From the other end of the spectrum then, from a cabinet point of view, I'm so pleased that we're on the verge of being able to sort out our contract extension for you, because I'm so, again, from a overall perspective, you're delivering the service that we anticipate that you should do. And that's ultimately what it's all about, isn't it? We need you to be our partners to provide this facility for all of our residents in the Vale. And I think it is, as Councillor Nugent mentioned, it is all about the communication. From my point of view, I've always seen that communication on various social media platforms, on your website. When I've had issues with that, the staff have been really helpful and helped me around that. So I think that as a provider for us, then you're doing an amazing job, and we're grateful for that. So thank you. That was all I really needed to say today.
Thank you, Councillor McCafford. Do we have anyone else who would like to comment on the, I guess, the two reports, I guess? Okay, I don't see anyone with their hands up. So we got 4 recommendations. So I'll just run through them really quickly, and then we can try and get them accepted. So we note the contents of the report and performance of the contract. We're happy that this year 10 performance report will be presented to scrutiny in the autumn of 2022. Committee consider the actions being taken in response to the Audit Wales report and endorses the approach proposed for the remainder of the contract period. And then that committee refers this report and the contents to the Governance and Audit Committee, and thereon to Cabinet for consideration in relation to the issues raised by Audit Wales. So are we happy to
move the recommendations?
Okay, we got proposer. Do we have a seconder? Happy to throw it out there.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Thomas's tag teaming. Thank you very much. Thank you, David, and thank you, Colleen. That was brilliant. Thank you so much for the report, and thank you for all the work. And yeah, the gym is a lifeline, especially during the period we've had the last couple of years, and may that continue. So thank you both, and have a good evening. You can stay for the next 4 agenda items if you like, or if you're happy to log off.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Cheerio. Okay. So we got 4 reports now from the Director of Social Services. The first one is agenda item 6, which is the revenue and capital monitoring, 1st of April to the 31st of January 2022. So then let's see who's taking this on. Gemma, hi there.
Hello, good evening. Sorry, I'm not sure why I've disappeared. I am here.
That's right.
Okay, so this is the revenue and capital monitoring to the end of January. So in terms of revenue, I'm looking first at children's services. There are some overspends in this area, mostly associated with children's placements. But these have been offset by projected underspends in the adult services and resource management.
Oh, we've lost Gemma. You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm still here. I'm just trying to find someone to look after my daughter.
No problem. We'll give you a second. Can now see Gemma.
Gemma, would you like me to step in and do it? Just nod if you would. I'm more than happy.
Oh, I think she's got it sorted.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I am here now. Sorry.
I think you might have to take it over.
No, I'm back now. Sorry about that. I'm so sorry about that. So it's been offset by projected underspends in adult services and resource management and safeguarding, and this largely reflects additional Welsh Government grants and some ongoing hardship funding that was being received in the service. In February, we were made aware of an additional 1.852 million for social care pressures, and after offsetting the small residual net overspend, we're projecting to transfer into the social services reserves 1.65 million, and this will be used to fund forward cost pressures and the budget programme that has been put forward as part of the budget proposals for 22-23. Sorry about that. So in terms of capital, and we've got some minor amendments on the Flying Start grants and the inclusion of 30,000. We've also got the inclusion of the All Wales Play grant to enhance outdoor classrooms, and some delays on the leisure centre schemes. Okay, thank you.
No problem, Gemma, thank you. Got there in the end. Any questions from the committee? Looks like we're all happy to. Don't see anyone with their hands up. Oh, Councillor Thomas.
Just to say thank you to Gemma for another comprehensive report. I mean, yes, it has been a trying year for everybody, and the cost pressures that social services particularly have been under have been immense. And yes, we have had support and money back from Welsh Gov and the budget that was agreed last night in full council. We will be actually giving back some of our reserves back into the general fund to help support yesterday's the budget that was agreed. Thank you again for your report, and yes, it does cover. It covers everything, and we can look forward. We can never predict the amount of money that we're going to be spending on children looked after. It is an ongoing unknown, and we do have to hedge our bets on that, which is why we do need the reserves that we tend to carry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas, for your words. I agree with 100% for that. Thank you. Right. I don't see anyone with any questions. So the recommendation on the table is that the Scrutiny Committee considers the position with regard to the 2021-22 and revenue and capital budgets. So we're happy to move. Councillor Thomas got his thumbs up. I'll happily second that. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gemma, for the report and the outlines. That was great. That's okay. No problems. Livens up the Scrutiny Committee. Never bad. Okay, we're on to agenda item 7, which is the proposed development of the Vale Alliance, an integrated model for the delivery of health and social care to adult citizens in the Vale of Glamorgan. So we got a few guests here from the NHS, Lisa Dunford and Kath Doman. Hi there, both. How are you doing?
Hi, good, thank you.
Hi.
Open the floor to you both.
Thank you. I think I'm going to open up this evening. So Kath Doman, Director of Health and Social Care Integration. So I have a partnership post like Suzanne's that works across the Vale of Glamorgan, Cardiff Council and the Health Board. So we'd like to take Scrutiny this evening through the approach that we've been developing to develop an alliance which will help build on the already existing really good work of integrated arrangements around health and social care in the Vale of Glamorgan. It will take it to the next level. So I'm going to just give a little bit of context and background, and then I'll hand over to Suzanne to take you through a little bit more of the detail. So Suzanne, I think you're driving the slides, aren't you? And we'll hop through these fairly rapidly. So you could take us to the next slide, please.
I knew that was going to happen. Bear with.
Got a sticky mouse?
No, it's because I tried to put it onto slideshow. So just bear with me one moment.
Okay, just while Suzanne's bringing that up, so you're familiar with the work of the RPB. I provided a summary to Scrutiny back in January, and of course Councillor Gray currently chairs the Regional Partnership Board. One of the major programmes that we have that we're running from the RPB is the At Home programme, and that's all about how do we join up health and social care so that people don't fall between the gaps of our complex range of services. So we don't really need to dwell. Oh, sorry. So thanks, Suzanne. So you can see our governance arrangements, which we won't dwell on, but we have established the 3 partnerships that I described back in January at Scrutiny into the Starting Well and Living Well and Ageing Well partnerships. So this programme of work falls under the Ageing Well Partnership, but it is, of course, applies to all ages. But fundamentally, it's about joined up locality-based health and social care. So next slide, please, Suzanne. So it's a very complex picture, as I'm sure you can understand, if you think about the whole range of services across health, social care and the third sector. But fundamentally, this is about doing as much as we can to enable people to stay healthy, well and independent at home and to deliver services as close to home as possible. So there are some big chunks of work that are associated with this programme, how we get people out of hospital as quickly as we can if they do need hospital treatment, but then importantly how we support them with intermediate care services to get them back on their feet again and being independent again, how we wrap around that support at home if people need ongoing support, and then how we get much more into prevention and early intervention and well-being. The point of the alliance is how we do that really closely together, so working closely across the Vale of Glamorgan Council and the Health Board to deliver that. Next slide, please. Is it sticking again?
Yeah, I am pressing forward and then it's not doing it.
It's going to gallop forward in a minute, isn't it? Just trying to remember what was on the next slide. Let me just have a quick look.
It's the services in scope.
It is, yeah. So
sorry, can you press the arrow button across or something? Does that work?
It's not working, no.
No problem.
Okay.
Do you want me to try and share it? See if I've got any luck. Give me one.
I'll email it to you now, Amy.
I've got it here. Don't worry. I'll put it up for you now. 1 second.
It's a different version, Amy.
Oh, is it? Oh, right. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I'll keep talking while we're fiddling with the slides. So we are looking at a wide spectrum of health and social care services in the At Home programme, and it's everything from access to services. So how do we have a much better joined up approach to getting into health and care services, work around how we develop joined up multidisciplinary, multi-agency teams based within very locally to people, the development of health and wellbeing centres and wellbeing hubs that you'll be very familiar with, the creating a much more coordinated approach to intermediate care to respond in a crisis and wrap those services around somebody so that we can keep them at home. So those are the care models that we're developing, and the Vale Alliance really is the vehicle for us to do that. So we're still struggling with the slides. Okay, so just to have a think about what we mean by an alliance. Really, that's moving from doing our thinking and planning separately as organisations to doing that much more closely together. So by alliance, we mean thinking and acting and behaving and making decisions as if we were on one organisation. And clearly we are separate sovereign organisations, but it's moving into that space where we're starting to think and act and behave as if we are one, and thinking about our total resources that we've got at our disposal so that we can better support people to achieve their ambitions in terms of their independence and well-being. So the alliance approach that we're working on, that Suzanne will take you through in a lot more detail, will enable the organisations to work much more closely together. We're obviously mindful that we need to test this, and don't want to make any dramatic changes. So we would take baby steps at first to work out how an alliance could operate, and the benefits that it can bring, and to work through how that might work. So I'll hand over to Suzanne now. That's okay, Suzanne. I don't know if you've got your slides back. Right, hop forward, and I'll hand over to Suzanne to take on the story from now. Thank you.
Thanks, Kath, and my apologies for my technical difficulties. And so I can see it on the screen now, so thank you, Amy. Amy, could you just put it forward to slide 6, please? There's obviously a little delay for it to catch up. Thank you so much. Okay, so why do we want to do this? So you can see here the 4 quadrants, the primary purposes and the anticipated advantages of developing the current integrated model that we've had in the Vale for some years, building on a really strong foundation, and look towards an alliance model. So in that top quadrant, the improved population health and wellbeing through a focus on prevention, that's something that we are really wanting to achieve, and move from being reactive into being more preventative, which I'm sure would be welcomed by Scrutiny members. In the second quadrant, improve the experience and quality of care for individuals and their families, and having that truly coordinated person-centred care. So it doesn't matter whether an individual is coming from an NHS professional background, or from one that's hosted at the moment within the council, that actually the individual receiving that service has that person-centred care, and it doesn't matter where the individual's employment contract lies. A focus on what matters to a person and a family. And again, Scrutiny members will be very familiar with the Social Services and Wellbeing Act and the language that's used in that. And that's what we want to try to embed within the Alliance. Moving to the bottom, the enrich the wellbeing capability and engagement of the workforce, not only the services that we deliver to our citizens, but the way in which we do that, the way we do things around here. And I think it's really important to look at the elimination of the inequity between some of the processes of our organisations, to allow for that quick and responsive decision making and improve workforce planning, and also to consider wider developmental opportunities and a sharing of skills across our workforce. And then finally, the value that's achieved from funding by pooling some of our resources, not just funding, but resources, and looking at that in its widest sense, eliminating any duplication of effort, and channeling all that into receiving the services for our citizens. Next slide, please, Amy. So the strategic drivers for the Alliance will all be familiar to, again, their Scrutiny members here. The strategic vision of a healthier Wales, a Welsh Government guidance and policy document that we've been working with for several years. And this builds on the foundation of the integrated model that we've had within the Vale, and takes it that one step further in trying to achieve further integration, and where areas we've got co-location, actually to try to ensure that it is true integration and delivered in that person-centred way. Some initial exploration has been supported through transformation funding, and this has shown how some of the models might work. And you can see there on the bottom sentence of this slide, the evidence base, looking in a variety of contexts, and most notably in New Zealand. So we have looked nationally and we have looked internationally at some of the models that might help us consider how we improve the way in which we work here in the Vale. You will also note that locally, again, when you've seen further reports that have come to Scrutiny Committee, where our monitoring of performance and activity has made reference to the Vale Alliance in its strong sense within the Vale of Glamorgan Council corporate plan and the associated service actions that are in that. And again, they're within the Adult Services Reshaping Programme. So this is all aligned nationally and then locally. Next slide, please, Amy. So the initial work has shown that although we can see the ambition for a Vale Alliance and the clear benefits this could have as a complete programme, we need to start smaller is what we're thinking, in order to truly evidence the true benefits of this as a model. And the three areas that we are considering and wanting to seek your support for this evening are these three areas at the top of the slide. The Vale Community Resource Service, already integrated, but actually, taking it that one step further to include pooled resources and looking at how we use the workforce differently. The same within the single point of access, as members will be clear to make that reference point, but moving that into becoming a Wellbeing Matters service. That's one that's for the front door for a combined service for what would be primary, community, intermediate care services, as well as adult social care, third sector colleagues, and potentially even further embracing other services. And our third sector commission services, noting that this is not just about statutory organisations, but it's very clear that we want to work in partnership with our third sector organisations, and recognising again the fact that we need to be more preventative in our approach. The lower part of this slide identifies some of the potential later phases and the services that, and I stress, for consideration, that we might want to explore should we be able to pursue the first three, and should we see some successes in those areas. So next slide, please, Amy. So this shows the timeline. It's an ambitious timeline, but one that we feel comfortable to be able to achieve. And you can see that now we're focusing on these three key areas that we're looking to try to, if tonight you are able to endorse the approach, to look to try to do that initial governance arrangement by September 2022, with later phases coming, as you can see here. Next slide, please, Amy. So by taking the gradual approach, we hope to demonstrate the benefits of further integration without risking disruption to the overall structures. And it provides an opportunity for us to assess what's right for the Vale, and embeds the concept of alliance working within the as is wherever possible. And, we're very keen to try to advance this, but not to the cost of current services, and not to distract either. So in order to try to establish a governance structure, and what that governance structure is to be determined, what kind of agreement that might look like. And that's why we're saying initial governance. And this is the information that we're saying that we need from the partner organisations, as you can see on the left-hand column, and the way in which we're going to do it through the work streams, with the outcome being the initial governance arrangement. So those work streams are already in some form or other established, and trying to work through what we might want to do in that first phase. And then the next slide, please, Amy. And this is just, I've taken this from the report that you would have received ahead of this evening's scrutiny committee to just highlight the recommendations. And these are the ones that I would like to seek your approval for. But of course, happy to take questions before you might want to consider whether that's the approach you wish to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you, Kath and Lisa there for supporting. Thank you for the presentation, that was great. So we have Councillor Gray here with his hand up. Would you like to add something before we on?
Yeah, I mean, as was noted by Kath, I currently chair the Regional Partnership Board, and coming into the portfolio I did in 2019, and being bombarded with health language, and I think one of the first slides had the big long arrow across the top. From memory, it's regional, locality, cluster, neighbourhood. Where does it end? I think the important thing to say is this isn't another layer of perhaps from the outside might look like meaningless language, because some of the structure that's within this can really drive forward getting things done. And so I have been driven by wanting to, an individual using services or in need of care, or wanting to have something preventative or support, doesn't need to know what category that they're falling into. They just need to know that they only need to tell us once, that we're going to be we're going to have something that can support them and wrap around where they are. And as has been identified, there are currently some services that do that. I think looking to the future stages, I always like to think of things in practical terms. If you look at something like a community hospital resource, at the moment you have multiple strands of a health board, not controlling in a negative way, but with responsibility for different parts of that community hospital delivery. And actually to be able to lever decision making that's appropriate to the community that it's supporting, there needs to be a sort of a slight twist around in how we govern the support facilities, services and delivery that affects those individuals. So it's not a negativity of where we are, and it's not throwing out the other processes that exist within the health board, the wider NHS, within the council services, and actually within the region. I think it's important to say locality in the Vale sense, that is the Vale. In Cardiff, there's more than one locality, so it is specific to a larger body of people, but it isn't a case of we'll have one locality for Cardiff and one for the Vale, and then why did we merge them in the first place? This is really about driving it in, and I think there are exciting times ahead. And for those that take it forwards, I really hope that we can continue to have that individual at the heart of what we're deciding to do, and that's really what's been driving forward the conversations. And it's only natural that we'd have to have conversations about governance in quite a lofty strategic sense, but we need to continue to remember it's about that individual person's journey, and why these initial phases that were listed in the 3 boxes above the middle dividing line that Suzanne went through are so important to prove this works. Not that anybody's doubting it, but I think we need to be able to unpick some of the mechanisms to make them work better for people. So I hope that Scrutiny can endorse this, and in the future, when Cabinet receives the papers, I hope that the Cabinet of the day are able to move forward with this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Does anyone would like to add any questions? I got a question as well. Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kath and Suzanne, for the presentations, and hi, Lisa. Ben, I endorse what you say, and yeah, this alliance does look like a huge improvement, a huge step forward. It should help grease the wheels between what happens within the NHS and what happens within the UHB, rather than what happens within the local council, where there have been hold-ups and jarring and territorial disputes, I suppose we could call it, about who is actually responsible for this bit and that bit. I would advocate, and I would like to see, if possible, a tell me once approach when this is up and running, and I'd like this to be part of your thinking, if possible, where patients, clients, whatever we're going to label them, are able to explain their needs at the portal, at the entrance door, or wherever, and say it once, and then that can then be shared. I mean, there are data protection considerations to come in here as well, which perhaps might provide stumbling blocks. But there is nothing more, in my experience, there's nothing more frustrating than having to tell the same story of woe time after time after time to different people, because because of the lack of integration of services, where you know, the file isn't accessible to the social worker, that's accessible to the district nurse, that's accessible to the physio, that is endless, and having to repeat what is actually often a painful thing isn't helpful to anybody. But having said that, I mean, I'd like to ensure that that we are equal partners in this alliance, and that full consultation occurs. My experience, as both Kath and Lisa will know from our discussions in the past about various other matters, is that I found perhaps the UHB has been less than assiduous in consulting with the community and local representatives, in my view, and you'll know to which I'm to what I'm referring. And maybe this will improve that situation as well, and we can have more community involvement, more discussion, more elected member involvement as well, because we do represent our constituents and are a port of call for them to come to find out what's going on and to make their protests. So I'd like us to see us as being strong partners working together, and I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I guess my only question is, and it might be a silly one, I don't know how the integration will work, but I know you got the timeline with, and you say, so how do you work out how many people would be working on to make that happen? How do you model that? Or is that something that after this gets endorsed, then you look at it, or do you have some ideas? How does that work?
So, Councillor Griffiths, if I may, and try to answer that question. It's certainly not a silly question. No such thing as a silly question. You know, this really is a scenario where it's exploratory. How I would envisage this in those three key areas at the moment is there's already a workforce associated with those key areas. And so that's naturally you would be discussing those at this point in time. In terms of the mechanism for actually delivering this is the areas that, you know, what partnership arrangement, what governance arrangement, you know, that's to be determined. But what I don't foresee is a significant additional number of individuals. It's within many of our roles already. It's about streamlining that and ceasing the duplication, so that we can make our time and our skills most appropriate and most efficient. So I'm not sure if that's answered the question, but that's as I said, it's exploratory at the moment. But those from a service perspective and from a governance point of view, that's where my thinking is at this point in time.
That does indeed help. Thanks, Stan. It's good, yeah, to understand how that's going. Lisa, do you want to add something before Councillor Gray?
Happy for Councillor Gray to go first.
No, you go first, Lisa. Mine was on Neil's question.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Gray. Yeah, I think just adding to what Suzanne has said, I think you've got the areas that we feel we could probably look at first in terms of phase one, and then go into what was the roadmap and the timeline. As you say, we've been working together. So myself, Kath and Suzanne, we've obviously got our finance team, we've got our board secretary and the health board working with the equivalent in the council. So at the moment, there's a number of us in roles who are looking at how could we make it happen. So, you know, we are doing this on top of the day job, so we haven't drawn in any additional support yet, but I think collectively there's a will to make this happen. So we are drawing on, I think, the right people across the local authority and the health board. So it is an indicative timeline, but we do feel that we could pull together those governance arrangements for September. And I think picking up on what Councillor Thomas had said as well, you know, there are components in there around the information governance and the data sharing. But, you know, there are examples elsewhere, as Suzanne has pointed out, where this has been done in other places, and then we can use that as a basis to do the work.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Kath?
Yeah, I'm lucky. This is my day job. This is what I come to work for. So I'm very, very pleased to support this work. I think, you know, in the short term, as we feel our way around this and start to put the arrangements in place, you know, it might be a little bit more clunky to start with. But ultimately, as we get into doing that joint planning, almost trying to think of ourselves as a single organisation rather than the planning happening in the health board and the planning happening in the Vale of Glamorgan, and we start to do that planning and thinking and acting together around the delivery of service, although that might be clunky to start with as we feel our way, ultimately that will be much more efficient because we're putting, as Councillor Thomas said, we're putting the person right at the centre and we're working back from that. So it's about putting in governance arrangements that keeps each of the organisations safe and delivers their statutory duties, but doing it in a much more joined up, coordinated way, which ultimately is going to make our resources, both staffing and financial resources, go that little bit further and hopefully deliver better outcomes for people at the end of the day.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to come back in again. It was really in response to Councillor Thomas's point and maybe to give a slightly nuanced political answer as well. There's certainly been occasions in the past where there have been moments where the UHB and the Vale Council could have worked more closely together. And I think it comes from certain parts of the authority of the UHB maybe not being in the same space at the same time. And I will assure you that, I have regular dialogue with the chair of the UHB, and we've had full and frank conversations where things have maybe fallen down in the past. But I would also note, having chaired a recent regional partnership board, there is a new chief executive in the UHB. She's really keen on how we can leverage data and understand what is happening to make sure that we are getting the outcomes we need. Further to what we talked about in terms of the Alliance using data, separate to that, the RPV's put forward a project to move forward on a ambitious IT programme that will seek to try and draw together this information that we're talking about and not just taking the core social services and those discharge areas for the hospital, but all of the other facets which sit within the health board, from emergency care right through to the physiotherapists and so forth that you talk about. So I think this is moving forward in its own pace, but also, as Kath mentioned at the very beginning, the RPB has a range of programmes that are all moving this way, and we've reflected on those with Scrutiny in January when we did the regular RPB report. I'm sure that the Chief Exec would want to come round and see the different authorities and visit the Scrutiny quiz. I'll leave her to do that introduction herself, but I think there is a willingness to leverage and to try and understand what the issues are, and an acceptance that we do need to work together to make the most efficient choices we can, both in terms of the cost of delivering things, but just making sure we're doing it right first time. So I recognise your concerns, I share some of them, and I've always been clear when that's happened with the UHB or others, but I think we've had some really good, positive conversations within the RPB. And it is important to note the final point about the third sector involvement. The Vale Council has a number of things it delivers because it has a close partnership with the third sector. And that's true right across the region, right across Wales. And so we can't move this forward without acknowledging that involvement. And so that's why that's really key as well, not to just totally get into a conversation between two statutory partners. But hopefully that's enough of me talking, but I hope you can support this scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Sounds very interesting. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions they would like to ask whilst we're here? Okay, I think we're all done. On to the recommendations, and thank you. So
I'll move the recommendations then, please, Chair.
Okay. Anyone happy to second? I have no problems. Sounds really good.
I'll fight you for it. I'll fight it for you, Chair.
Councillor David, you can have it. Okay. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Kath.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you, Councillor Gray. That was a great presentation, and all good luck. And hope to hear from you when you got to stage 2.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, on to well, agenda item 8, and we got agenda item 9, so we've got 2 more to go. Both of them quite large, but let's tackle the first one then. So, annual delivery plan monitoring report, quarter 3 performance, 2021-2022. Lance, I believe it's over to yourself. So I know, Amy, I don't know if you want to go say anything as well regarding, because it is quite a large performance report, monitor report, and there's any.
Nothing from myself, thank you, Chair. Obviously, the recommendations are as set out in the report, and I'm sure Lance will probably mention that it takes the same format as per the previous reports that you've had.
Yeah, I was going to start with exactly that, Amy, really, and I suppose just for Scrutiny Committee members, they'll be familiar with the format of this quarterly monitoring report, and there is an awful lot of information in there. There's a lot to go through. Highlighting any particular one part of it, I think probably wouldn't do the rest of it justice. I suppose I will pull out that we have made positive progress in regards to the annual delivery plan. Our overall performances therefore got a green status, which is clearly very positive. I think one of the things that I think we've all found very helpful in terms of putting together various at these intervals really has been the report that you can see at Appendix B, which really does kind of focus the work that we've done in a COVID pandemic context, and I suppose the achievements that I think we've made in very real terms against the areas set out in the corporate plan. And so rather than me go into those, I was going to open up this to any questions. It's a very detailed and informative report, so I think it's probably best to allow members to query if there's anything that isn't clear or they want any clarification on.
Thank you, Lance. Would anyone like to start us off with any questions? Councillor Thomas?
It always seems to be me. I do wait to see if anybody else puts their hand up first. I'm not jumping in, honest. I mean, yeah, it's pleasing to see the generally excellent progress in so many areas, despite the restrictions imposed by the measured science-based restrictions from Welsh Gov in their battle to help us protect our residents and ourselves as much as possible from the consequences of COVID. In line with the other public services, such as the NHS, pressures on this directorate have been huge, especially in social care, and in-person family support has been restricted to a certain extent, though our teams have worked extremely hard to maintain service levels. We should expect many of the red rag status things in the reports to be revisited in Q4, and to find that the ones that have been delayed because of COVID, I would look to being moving in a more favourable direction during the present quarter. I'm remembering that this report refers to the previous quarter, and things have changed. I feel this committee should offer our heartfelt thanks to all our teams for such sterling performances, given the circumstances, and I'd like to do that. The recommendations ask for suggestions on how some of the red status actions can be addressed, and yet most of them have already looked at ways forward. For example, the ADP 67 on page 93 anticipates the discussion we've just had about the Vale Alliance, I'd suggest, and once that's fully operational, I would hope that would make a huge difference, although the timeline for that is a year on. But but progress towards that, I think, will be beneficial. So basically, yeah, I really don't have any questions. I just wanted to make those observations about A, the team, B, the report, and C, the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Anyone else? Okay, I think we're good. So we've got 3 recommendations. Consider the performance, results and progress towards achieving the plan. Consider the remedial actions, and that we note the progress. Recovery strategy tutorial provides a response to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Are we all happy to note those 3?
Yeah, I move, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Thomas and Councillor Thomas. Thank you, Lance, for that report. It's great to see that we're moving on with those, and again, very in depth. Okay, and then we're on to the final agenda item. Well, not technically, but one with substance, which is the service plan and target setting to deliver the Vale of Glamorgan Council's annual delivery plan 2022 to 2023. That's.
And thank you again. I suppose again probably a similar report, but this time looking forward rather than looking back. And I think this is where we have set out essentially the detailed planning arrangements that we are putting in place into next year in order to continue to achieve in relation to the annual delivery plan. And so for social services, you can particularly see the 3 divisions, which represented by Suzanne, Amanda and Rachel, in relation to their detailed service plans. You'll see those, I think it's at 2.7. So there's a lot of detail again within this report. It's there's lots of appendices. I could pull out various things, but to do so would neglect others. And again, I suppose I would, rather than go through and attempt to summarise all of that information, which I won't be able to do, I would be happy to answer questions, or my colleagues will be.
Okay, thank you, Lance. Anyone got any questions, comments? Councillor Thomas?
It's becoming a one-man show, this. Thank you again, Chair. Again, thank you for the report. Couple of concerns. One is the difficulty I find in trying to extract information and a report on the leisure, in both this and the previous report, on Dave Nevitt's area on the leisure stuff. And I was wondering whether in future, in the way that we have these sort of frontispieces for the various bits of the report, sort of talking about who's responsible, the officer responsible, head of service and chief execs in the service to plan bit, whether there's some way of extracting those and presenting them in that fashion. I mean, certainly I would find that helpful. And the other part is on page 81 of the report, point 4.22, on child assessments. I mean, this is a matter of concern in the light of some of the reports in the national press in recent times about children experiencing considerable harm and parents dodging supervision by citing COVID self-isolation as a reason not to allow social workers direct access to the child. And really, I'd like to know how we're responding to that. Hiya, Rachel.
Hi, Councillor. Yeah. We've had this conversation, haven't we, in other arenas, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have it again. We're not experiencing difficulty in getting in, and we have remained active in the community throughout the pandemic. That doesn't mean that we haven't had to think differently about how we gain access, and PPE and safety has been a primary consideration, but we have been active in the community. and we are achieving access. The service is certainly having a struggle in relation to capacity and the demand that's coming in, and that I think is causing some challenges for us in the timeliness of writing up assessments, for example. But there's no question that we're active in our duties and undertaking those visits, citing children, more than citing children, being able to complete our assessments to identify need, risk, and to respond accordingly in partnership with those we support, obviously children and families.
Thanks, Rachel. I mean, that is reassuring. I mean, certainly, we have been hearing reports that other authorities have had less effectiveness, perhaps occasionally, and there have been tragedies as a result. But it's good to know that once again, you and your team are doing sterling service on that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you both. Right, last chance for any other questions or comments. Okay, 2 recommendations. That one we review and endorse via the 2 appendixes, and that we review and endorse via recommendation to Cabinet the proposed service improvement targets of 2022-23, Appendix B relating to the remit of this committee. Are we all happy to do that? Okay. Yeah. Councillor Thomas and Councillor Thomas, thank you both. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everyone. We've got Agenda Item 10, Urgency Part 1, no. Item 2, 11 then, Urgent Part 2, I don't. So, last but not least, the last question is, when's the next meeting, Amy? Do we know?
Hello, Chair. Our next meeting is currently scheduled for the 5th of April.
Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, speakers. She'll see you all at the next meeting for the Scrutiny Committee in a month's time, 5th of April. Take care and a good night.
Thank you very
Good
much,
night, all.
Chair.
Bye now.
Thank you, Chair. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.